The Great Hall was bigger than most cities. Thousands of seats rose up in circles filled with beings from across the galaxy. Some had fur, some had scales, others looked like walking crystals. All of them were angry, and all of them were looking at one small group near the center of the room. Hyunwoo Park stood straight and calm. He wore the simple blue uniform of Earth's diplomatic service. Next to him, Bo-Ram Kim held a data tablet, her face showing no emotion. They were the only humans in a room full of aliens who wanted them gone. Above them all, Chancellor HFY floated in his containment suit. His species needed different air to breathe, so he lived inside a bubble of green gas. When he spoke, his voice came through speakers that made it sound cold and harsh. "Today we decide the fate of the human species," HFY announced. His words echoed through the massive hall. "They have shown us their true nature. They build weapons when we ask for peace. They refuse to follow our laws. They claim whole star systems as their own property." Murmurs of agreement rippled through the crowd. A delegate with 6 arms waved them all in the air. Another being that looked like a giant insect clicked its approval. Hyunwoo had heard these complaints before. For 5 years he had sat in this hall, trying to explain humanity's actions, trying to make them understand that humans were not the monsters they believed them to be. "Ambassador Park," HFY continued, "you have requested to speak before we vote. The council will hear your final words." Hyunwoo walked to the center of the hall. His footsteps echoed in the sudden silence. Around him, hundreds of alien eyes watched his every move. Some looked curious, most looked hostile. "Honored delegates," he began, his voice carrying clearly through the hall. "My species has made mistakes. We admit this freely. When we first came to the stars, we brought our fears with us. We built defenses because we did not know if we would find friends or enemies." A delegate from the Serpent Worlds hissed loudly. "You built war fleets, enough ships to destroy planets." "We built ships to protect our families," Hyunwoo replied, calmly. "Just as you all have fleets to protect yours. We never attacked anyone. We never threatened anyone. We only asked for the right to exist in peace." "Peace?" Chancellor HFY's voice dripped with contempt. "You call it peace when you refuse to let our inspectors examine your weapons? You call it peace when you build barriers around your home system?" "We call it sovereignty," Hyunwoo said. "The same sovereignty you grant to every other species. In this council, we asked only to be treated as equals." The hall erupted in angry voices. Delegates shouted over each other in dozens of different languages. Some banged tentacles on their desks. Others flashed angry colors on their skin. HFY called for order. "The human speaks of equality, but humans are not equal to us. They are young, violent, unpredictable. They have been in space for less than 200 years, yet they act as if they own the galaxy. We own nothing but what we have built with our own hands," Hyunwoo replied. "Our colonies were founded on empty worlds. Our trade routes go through unclaimed space. We have taken nothing from any of you." "You have taken our peace of mind," said Counselor HFY. She was tall and covered in golden scales that caught the light as she moved. "Every night we wonder what the humans will do next. Will they decide our worlds are threats? Will they attack us with those terrible weapons of yours?" Bo-Ram stepped forward and whispered something in Hyunwoo's ear. He nodded and looked back at the council. "If our presence here causes you such distress," he said, "then perhaps it is time for us to leave. Not because we are guilty of your accusations, but because neighbors should not live in fear of each other." The hall went quiet again. This was not what they had expected him to say. "You would leave voluntarily?" asked a delegate whose body seemed to be made of living metal. "If that is what you wish," Hyunwoo said. "But understand this. If we leave completely. We will take our ships, our trade, our knowledge, and our friendship with us. We will not return unless invited back as equals." Chancellor HFY laughed, a sound like breaking glass. "You think we need you? The galaxy existed for millions of years before humans learned to make fire. It will continue long after you're gone." "Perhaps," Hyunwoo said quietly, "but it will not be the same galaxy." The vote was called. One by one, the delegates announced their decision. The Altarian hegemony voted to expel humanity. The Crystal Collective agreed. The Void Swimmers added their voice to the chorus. Even species that had traded peacefully with humans for decades voted them out. Only 3 delegates chose not to vote at all. The rest wanted humanity gone. When the counting was finished, Chancellor Vexitae announced the result with obvious satisfaction. By a vote of 43-0 with 3 abstentions, the Galactic Council hereby expels the human species from civilized space. You have 30 standard days to remove all human presence from Council territory. Any human ships found in our space after that time will be destroyed. The hall filled with cheers and applause. Delegates celebrated as if they had won a great victory. Hyunwoo stood in the center of it all, calm and unmoved. Boram touched his arm gently. It was time to go. Wait, Vextai called out. Do you have any final words for this council? Hyunwoo turned back one last time. His voice was soft, but in the sudden quiet, everyone could hear him clearly. Yes, he said. I want you to remember this day. Remember that you had a choice. You could have chosen to work with us, to learn from us, to grow alongside us. Instead, you chose fear. You chose to drive away the one species that asked nothing more than to be your friend. He paused, looking around the great hall one final time. We came to the stars with open hearts and open hands. We offered you our knowledge, our strength, our loyalty. You have rejected all of it. Very well. We will not trouble you again. Hyunwoo and Boram walked toward the exit. Their footsteps echoed in the silent hall. No one spoke until they were gone. Within hours, the message went out to every human ship, station, and colony in the galaxy. The recall was beginning. Humanity was going home. But as the first human ships began their long journey back to Earth, few in the Council realized what they had just lost. They would understand soon enough. The galaxy was about to become a much lonelier place. Captain Taehyung Lee had been making supply runs to New Seoul Station for 15 years. He knew every corridor, every shop, every face in the bustling trade hub. The station had been humanity's greatest achievement in this sector, a massive, spinning wheel of metal and crystal that housed 3 million beings from dozens of species. Now, as his ship dropped out of hyperspace, he found nothing but empty space and debris. Taehyung stared at the sensor readings, unable to believe what he was seeing. Run the scan again, he told his navigator, a young Altarian named Kilthax. I have run it 4 times, Captain, Kilthax replied, his voice filled with confusion. There is nothing here. No station, no ships, no energy signatures, just a small beacon broadcasting a message. Play the message. A human voice filled the bridge, calm and professional. This is Automated Beacon 77 Alpha. By order of the Galactic Council, this system is now off limits to human presence. All human facilities have been removed. Do not approach the beacon. Message repeats in 30 seconds. Taehyung felt a chill run down his spine. He had been in space long enough to know that moving a station the size of New Seoul was impossible. It would take years to dismantle it piece by piece. Yet somehow the humans had done it in just 3 months. Captain, his communications officer called out. I am detecting similar beacons in 17 other systems on our trade route. The next few weeks brought more shocking discoveries. At Kepler 442b, where humans had built the largest industrial complex in the Outer Rim, search teams found pristine wilderness. The factories, the cities, the orbital elevators, all gone without a trace. Even the mining operations deep underground had been removed so completely that sensors could not detect where they had been. Most disturbing of all was what they found at New Busan. The agricultural world had fed half the outer colonies with its massive hydroponic farms. Now it was just an empty planet with perfect soil and clean rivers, as if no one had ever lived there at all. Trade Minister Kale Thos of the Commerce Guild called an emergency meeting. Representatives from dozens of species gathered in the guild's headquarters, all with the same question. How had the humans done this? "It is impossible," declared Admiral Zephyra, her golden scales dim with worry. "You cannot move entire cities overnight. You cannot erase industrial complexes without leaving scars on the land. Yet our sensors show nothing. Nothing at all." "The humans always were good at logistics," Kael'thas said quietly, "but this goes beyond anything we thought possible. They have not just left, they have erased themselves from our space as if they never existed." Director Malgoth of the Mining Consortium brought worse news. The rare Earth deposits on Kepler 442b are still there, but the extraction equipment is gone. Not broken, not abandoned, gone, as if it was never there. My teams cannot figure out how to restart the mining operations. "Perhaps that is for the best," said Counselor Vextai. "We no longer need to worry about human interference in our affairs, but the problems were just beginning. Without human cargo ships, trade between the outer rim and the core world slowed to a crawl. The humans had operated the most efficient shipping network in the galaxy, moving goods faster and cheaper than anyone else. Their ships had followed routes through dangerous space that other species avoided, cutting travel time by weeks. Now those routes were empty. Shipping costs have increased by 400%, reported economic advisor Yalmesh at the next council meeting. Many outer colonies are running short of essential supplies. We will adapt, Vextai replied firmly. Other species can take over the human trade routes. It is not that simple, Yalmesh said. The humans had exclusive agreements with many suppliers. They had warehouses on 1,000 worlds, distribution networks that took decades to build. Their ships were designed specifically for long-range cargo hauling. We do not have anything that can replace them quickly. But the council was confident. They had wanted the humans gone, and now they were gone. The galaxy would be better off without them. The first year passed with minor problems. Supply shortages here and there, but nothing that could not be managed. Some colonies complained about slower trade, but life went on. The second year brought bigger troubles. Dr. Jin A. Seo, a crystalline collective scientist who had worked with human researchers for many years, noticed something disturbing. The medical databases that humanity had shared with other species were starting to become corrupted. "It is not random data decay," she explained to her colleagues. "The files are being systematically deleted, as if the humans programmed them to self-destruct after a certain time." This meant that treatments for dozens of diseases were disappearing. The humans had been the galaxy's leading experts in adaptive medicine, treatments that could work across different species. Without their research, many colonies were helpless against new plagues and genetic disorders. By the third year, even the council could not ignore the problems. "The Helix plague has spread to 47 worlds," reported Director of Health Services, Mordok. "Without human medical technology, we cannot stop it. The death toll is already in the millions. Find another solution," Vextai ordered. "We managed before the humans came. We will manage now that they are gone." But they had not managed before. The galaxy had been much smaller then, with fewer worlds and less trade between species. The humans had not just joined the galactic community, they had transformed it. Their technology, their trade networks, their knowledge had become essential to keeping civilization running. Now all of that was gone. Mi Young Choi, one of the few council members who had opposed the expulsion, tried one more time to contact Earth. She sent her message through old diplomatic channels hoping someone would listen. "Please," she transmitted toward human space. "We may have been hasty in our decision. The Rim colonies are suffering without your supply lines. Perhaps we can discuss your return." For 6 months there was no answer. Then a single ship appeared at the edge of council space. It was small, sleek, and unlike any human vessel anyone had seen before. The ship's captain identified herself as Su-Bin Lee. Her message was brief and to the point. "The Galactic Council asked humanity to leave. We have honored that request. Humanity thanks the Council for its concern. But we have found our path among the stars leads elsewhere. We will not be returning." "But the colonies," Mi Young transmitted back. "People are dying without your medical technology." "That is unfortunate," Captain Lee replied. But it is no longer our responsibility. You made your choice. Now you must live with the consequences. The human ship jumped back into hyperspace, leaving the council space as quickly as it had come. In the months that followed, more disturbing reports reached the council. Deep space sensors had detected massive construction projects in the void between spiral arms. Human ships, but not like anything they had built before. These vessels were enormous, some larger than small moons. What are they building out there? Wondered Admiral HFY. No one had an answer. The humans had not just left civilized space. They had moved beyond it entirely, into regions where no other species dared to go. What they were doing in that dark, empty void was a mystery. But one thing was becoming clear. Humanity had not been weakened by their exile. If anything, they were growing stronger. The galaxy that had rejected them was starting to realize what they had lost. But it might already be too late to get it back. The great silence continued, and with each passing day it grew more ominous. The emergency session of the Galactic Council was unlike any in recorded history. Representatives arrived in ships showing obvious signs of damage. Some delegates were missing entirely, their species too busy fighting for survival to attend meetings. Dr. Jinne Seo stood at the central podium, her crystalline body flickering with distress patterns. In her hands, she held a data crystal that contained some of the most terrifying information the Council had ever heard. The Helix Plague has now spread to 112 worlds, she announced. The death toll has reached 50 million beings and continues to climb. Our best medical teams are helpless against it. Murmurs of fear rippled through the hall. Many delegates had lost friends, family members, even entire colonies to the plague. We have tried every treatment in our databases, Dr. Seo continued. Nothing works. The plague adapts faster than we can develop new medicines. It is as if it was designed to resist all of our medical technology. Chancellor Vextai floated in his containment suit, his voice now lacking its former confidence. What do you recommend, Doctor? The human databases contained research on adaptive immunology that we cannot replicate. Their treatment protocols were the only ones that showed promise against diseases like this. Without that research, the plague will continue to spread until it burns itself out. How long will that take? Asked a delegate from the Void Swimmers. Doctor, Sao's body dimmed. Based on current infection rates, the plague could kill 500 million beings before running out of hosts. The hall fell silent. 500 million lives, the equivalent of losing dozens of entire species. But the plague was not their only problem. Admiral Mordak of the Crystal Collective rose to speak next. His normally bright form was cracked and scarred from recent battles. The Void Hunters have returned, he announced simply. The reaction was immediate. Delegates gasped, some crying out in their native languages. The Void Hunters were a name from nightmares, extragalactic predators who had last invaded 3 centuries ago. They consumed entire star systems, turning matter and energy into fuel for their terrible ships. How many? Asked Admiral HFY, her golden scales now dull with stress. Our deep space sensors detected over 300 ships at the galactic rim. They are testing our defenses, probing for weaknesses. It is the same pattern they followed during their last invasion. What is the status of our defense grid? Mordak's form grew dimmer. That is the problem. The early warning systems in the outer sectors were built using human technology. The humans designed and maintained most of our detection networks. When they left, those systems began failing. Why did they not continue to function? The humans used something they called adaptive architecture. The systems learned and evolved to better detect threats. Without human technicians to guide that evolution, the systems have become confused. They now generate so many false alerts that we have had to shut most of them down. The implications were staggering. The galaxy's outer defenses were blind. The Void Hunters could approach without warning, just as they had centuries ago when they nearly destroyed galactic civilization. Economic advisor Yalmesh delivered the final blow to the Council's hopes. Galactic economic output has dropped by 23% since the human departure, he reported. Unemployment is at record levels. Food production is down 18%. Industrial output has fallen by nearly half in some sectors. How is this possible? Demanded Vextai. The humans were only one species among dozens. They were not. Just another species, Yalmesh explained. They were the connective tissue that held our economy together. Their trade networks moved goods between species that had never dealt with each other directly. Their technology enabled production methods that we cannot replicate. Their research drove innovation across every field of science. He activated a holographic display showing trade routes throughout the galaxy. Areas that had once glowed bright, with activity were now dark. Look at the outer rim colonies. Without human supply ships, many are cut off from vital resources. Some have been forced to abandon their worlds entirely. The refugees are streaming toward the core systems, creating overcrowding and social unrest. We will adapt, Vextai said, but his voice lacked conviction. It is not a matter of adapting, Yalmesh replied. The humans did not just participate in our economy, they transformed it. They introduced concepts like just-in-time manufacturing and distributed logistics that we had never seen before. Our entire industrial base was rebuilt around human innovations. The truth was becoming clear. The galaxy had not simply lost one species among many. It had lost the species that had become essential to its survival. Desperate for solutions, the Council authorized Ambassador Hai-Jin Nam to attempt direct contact with Earth. She was one of the few diplomats who had maintained friendly relations with humanity before the expulsion. Her message was simple and humble. The galaxy needs humanity's return. We acknowledge our mistakes. Name your terms for ending this exile. For 6 months there was silence. Then a single human ship appeared at the edge of Council space, the same sleek vessel that had delivered the previous rejection. Captain Subin Lee's response was broadcast to the entire Council. Humanity appreciates the sentiment. We recognize the difficulties you are facing. However, we must decline to return. We have found our path among the stars leads elsewhere. Please, Ambassador Nam transmitted back. Billions of lives are at stake. Surely your conscience will not allow you to abandon innocent beings to suffer and die. Captain Lee's response was cold and final. Our conscience is clear. We offered friendship and were rejected. We offered cooperation and were expelled. We offered our knowledge and were told it was not needed. The galaxy chose to stand alone. Now it must learn whether it can survive alone. The human ship jumped away, leaving the Council to face the growing crisis without help. But intelligence reports began filtering in from the galactic void that painted a disturbing picture. The humans were not just surviving in exile, they were thriving. Director Wujin Han of Council Intelligence presented his findings to a closed session of the senior leadership. Our long-range sensors have detected massive construction projects in the void between spiral arms, he reported. The humans are building something unprecedented, structures the size of small planets, powered by energy sources we cannot identify. Weapons? Asked Admiral Zephyra. Unknown. The energy signatures are unlike anything in our databases, but the scale of construction suggests capabilities far beyond what humanity possessed when they left our space. The implications were terrifying. In just 5 years of exile, humanity had developed technology that the Council could not even understand. What would they be capable of in 10 years? 20? Could they help us against the Void Hunters? Asked Vextai quietly. Based on the energy readings, I believe they could stop the Hunters easily, Han replied. The question is whether they would choose to do so. The answer came sooner than expected. When the Void Hunter fleet finally launched their full invasion, 10,000 ships emerging from the dark space between galaxies, humanity watched from their hidden positions in the void. Their sensors were far more advanced than anything the Council possessed. They could see every ship, track every movement, predict every strategy the Hunters would use. But when the desperate pleas for help came from the Council worlds, the human response was swift and absolute. President Yejin Bayek spoke for all of humanity in a message that would be remembered for generations. The galaxy chose its path when it expelled us. We have chosen ours. Each must face the consequences of their decisions alone. The Void Hunters swept into Council space like a tide of destruction. and humanity did nothing to stop them. The galaxy that had rejected their friendship would learn what the universe was like without it. The Void Hunter invasion had been raging for 3 years when Intelligence Director Wu Jin Han made a discovery that changed everything the Council thought they knew about humanity. His deep space reconnaissance probe had been tracking the mysterious human construction projects in the galactic void when it detected something impossible. The humans were not just building ships and stations, they were building entire worlds from nothing. "Show me the images again," demanded Chancellor Vextai, his containment suit flickering with agitation. Han activated the holographic display. The images were grainy and distorted by distance, but clear enough to understand. Massive human vessels were manipulating cosmic dust and debris, forming it into perfect spheres. Within days, these spheres became living worlds with oceans, continents, and breathable atmospheres. "How is this possible?" whispered Admiral Zephyra. "We do not know," Han admitted. "Our scientists believe they are manipulating matter at the quantum level, rebuilding atomic structures to create whatever they need. The energy requirements should be impossible, but somehow they are doing it." The probe had detected more than world building. The humans had created mobile cities that dwarfed anything in Council space. These city ships moved between star systems, as easily as shuttles once moved between planets. Each one housed millions of beings and contained everything needed for a completely independent civilization. Most shocking of all, the humans were no longer alone. The probe detected ships from at least 3 other species working alongside the humans. Han continued, "These are not species from our galaxy. The hull designs, the energy signatures, even the basic physics of their ships are completely foreign." "First, contact with extragalactic civilizations," breathed Dr. Jin'e Seo. "The humans have achieved what we could only dream of." The implications were staggering. While the Council had been fighting for survival against the Void Hunters, humanity had been making allies in other galaxies. They had access to resources, knowledge, and technology from across the universe. "There is more," Han said reluctantly. "Our probe detected dimensional rifts near the human fleet. They appear to be using some form of interdimensional travel. They can move between galaxies as easily as we once moved between star systems." The room fell silent. The technology gap between humanity and the Council had become so vast that comparison was meaningless. The species that had been expelled for being too primitive and dangerous had become the most advanced civilization anyone had ever encountered. But the most disturbing revelation was yet to come. The probe also detected monitoring stations, Han continued. "Hundreds of them positioned throughout our galaxy. The humans are watching everything that happens here. They know about every battle, every defeat, every desperate call for help. They have the capability to intervene at any time." "Then, why do they not help?" asked Counselor Mi Young Choi, her voice filled with anguish. The answer came from an unexpected source. Fleet Admiral Kyung Soo Yoon appeared on the main communication screen. He was older now, his hair gray, and his face lined with years of responsibility. Behind him, the bridge of his ship stretched away into impossible distances filled with technology that seemed like magic. "Because you taught us what friendship is worth," he said simply. "You showed us that when people reveal their true nature, we should believe them." "Admiral Yoon," Vextai said, his voice now stripped of its former arrogance. "Surely you cannot hold the actions of politicians against innocent civilians." "We hold nothing against anyone," Yoon replied. "We simply learned from your example. When you believed we were dangerous, you expelled us rather than try to understand us. When we offered cooperation, you chose fear instead. We are not acting from anger or revenge. We are simply following the precedent you set." "But billions are dying." "Billions were going to die anyway," Yoon said calmly. "The Void Hunters return every few centuries. The plague cycles through the galaxy every few decades. These problems existed before we arrived, and they will exist after we are gone. The difference is that now you must face them alone, as you chose to do." The transmission ended, leaving the Council to contemplate their situation. But humanity's response was not complete abandonment. Reports began filtering in from the war zones that confused and frustrated the Council leadership. Entire populations were disappearing from worlds about to fall to the Void Hunters. At first, the Council assumed this meant mass casualties. Then, refugees began appearing in the outer void, not dead but very much alive. Director of Humanitarian Affairs In-Soo Lee coordinated the largest rescue operation in galactic history. Human ships would appear without warning at doomed worlds, evacuate millions of civilians, and vanish back into interdimensional space before the Void Hunters even knew they were there. But these refugees were not being returned to Council space. Where? Are they taking our people? Demanded Vextai during another emergency session. Ambassador Nam, who had maintained the only ongoing communication channel with humanity, provided the answer. They are being offered a choice, she reported. Join humanity's interdimensional civilization as equal partners, or be resettled on safe worlds in the void between galaxies, far from both the Void Hunters and the failing Council territories. They are stealing our populations. No, Nam said, quietly. They are saving them, and most are choosing to stay with the humans rather than return to us. The reports from the refugees painted a picture that the Council could barely comprehend. Humanity had created something unprecedented, a civilization that spanned multiple galaxies and dimensions. Species from dozens of different realities worked together as equals, sharing knowledge and resources freely. There was no council, no central authority, no species hierarchy. Decisions were made by consensus among communities that included beings from across the universe. The refugees described cities that existed partially in normal space and partially in other dimensions, powered by energies drawn from the quantum foam itself. They have built paradise, reported one Alterian refugee who had returned to warn his people. Not just for humans, but for everyone who chooses to join them. There is no poverty, no hunger, no war between species. They have solved problems we did not even know existed. Then why will they not share this paradise with us? Asked Vextai. The refugee's answer was simple. Because you chose not to be their partners when it mattered. Now they have found better ones. As the Void Hunter invasion continued, more Council territories fell. The Alterian hegemony collapsed entirely, its survivors fleeing to human refugee camps. The Crystal Collective went into hibernation to avoid extinction. The proud Draconian Empire retreated to their core worlds and prepared for a final siege. Through it all, humanity watched. From their interdimensional strongholds, they had the power to end the invasion in hours, but they chose not to interfere. President Dong-Hyun Park, grandson of the ambassador who had been expelled years earlier, explained humanity's position in what would be their final communication. With the Council, we offered you our friendship when we were weak and you were strong. You chose fear over cooperation, suspicion over trust. Now we are strong and you are weak. But we will not repeat your mistakes. We will not force our help on those who do not want it. We will not impose our values on civilizations that have chosen a different path. We want your help now, pleaded Supreme Chancellor Rithanol, the emergency leader of what remained of the Council. Now is too late, Park replied. The time for partnership was when we stood as equals. That time has passed. The galaxy made its choice. Now it must live with the consequences. The transmission ended, and with it, any hope of human intervention in the war. But the refugees continued to stream into human space, and with them went the future of galactic civilization. The brightest minds, the most skilled workers, the most innovative thinkers, all chose to join humanity's interdimensional empire rather than remain in the dying Council territories. The galaxy that had rejected humanity was slowly emptying itself, one refugee ship at a time. Humanity had moved beyond needing the galaxy's acceptance. They had found something better, true partnership with civilizations that valued cooperation over dominance. The old order was ending, and a new one was rising in its place. But this new order would be built in the void between galaxies, far from the species that had chosen fear over friendship. The war had lasted 7 years, and the galaxy was dying. Supreme Chancellor Rithanol stood in what remained of the Council chambers, looking out at seats that would never be filled again. 47 species had once debated the future of galactic civilization in this hall. Now only 12 delegates remained, representing the scattered survivors of once mighty civilizations. The Alterian hegemony was gone. Its billion-year history ended in a single desperate battle above their homeworld. The Crystal Collective slept, in stasis, hoping to outlast the invasion in their deep underground vaults. The Draconian Empire had retreated to a single star system, their golden ships turned black with damage and despair. Species after species had fallen to the Void Hunters. Some fought to the last ship, others surrendered and were consumed anyway. A few managed to flee to the galactic rim, but even there they found no safety. The monsters from beyond had grown stronger since their last invasion. Their ships were bigger, their weapons more terrible, their hunger more endless than ever before. And through it all, humanity watched in silence. Rithnal activated the emergency broadcast system one final time. His message would reach every surviving world in council space, and he knew it would also reach the human monitoring stations hidden throughout the galaxy. People of the galaxy, he began, his voice heavy with exhaustion and defeat. This is likely our final transmission as a free civilization. The Void Hunters have broken through our last major defense line. Our fleets are scattered, our worlds are burning, and our children are dying. He paused, gathering strength for what came next. We were wrong. We acted in fear and ignorance when we expelled humanity from our space. We let pride and suspicion blind us to the value of true friendship. We destroyed the only alliance that might have saved us, and now our children pay the price for our mistakes. His voice broke slightly. To humanity, wherever you are in your interdimensional realm, we are begging you, please. We know we have no right to ask. We know we brought this fate upon ourselves. But if there is any mercy left in your hearts, if you remember what we once might have been together, help us. The message ended, and Rithanol waited for a response that he knew would never come. But it did come from an unexpected source. Admiral Young Ho Kwan's face appeared on the communication screen. He looked older but not tired, his uniform bearing insignia that represented no earthly nation. Behind him, the bridge of his ship extended into curved dimensions that hurt to look at directly. Supreme Chancellor, he said formally, humanity has received your message, Cruise Admiral Kwan, Rithnal said, hope flickering in his voice. Will you help us? Kwan's expression remained neutral. You taught us a valuable lesson about friendship, Chancellor. When someone shows you who they truly are, believe them. You showed us that we were never truly welcome among you. We were wrong, Rithnal pleaded. We were afraid of what we did not understand. Yes, you were afraid, Kwan agreed. And when faced with that fear, you chose exile over understanding, separation over cooperation. You made your position clear. We respected your decision then, and we respect it now. But surely you cannot stand by and watch billions die. We are not standing by, Kwan replied. Our rescue ships have evacuated over 2 billion civilians from your failing worlds. They are safe in our interdimensional colonies, far from the reach of the Void Hunters. Then why not save our civilization? Kwan was quiet for a long moment before answering. Because your civilization chose not to include us when you had the chance. The beings we have saved will help us build something new. A civilization based on cooperation instead of fear, inclusion instead of exclusion. The transmission ended, leaving Rithnal alone with his despair. But the evacuations continued. Human ships appeared without warning at doomed worlds, taking aboard millions of refugees before vanishing back into interdimensional space. They came for everyone, former enemies and former friends alike. The humans made no distinction based on species or past loyalties. Director Insu Lee, who coordinated the massive rescue operation, made one final offer to the council leadership. Any being who wishes to leave may do so, he transmitted to the dying worlds. We offer 3 options. Join our interdimensional civilization as equal partners. Be resettled on safe worlds we have prepared in the galactic void, or remain here and face whatever comes. Most chose to leave. They had seen what humanity had built in their exile. A society that welcomed all species as equals, that shared knowledge and resources freely, that had solved the ancient problems of hunger, disease, and war. The refugees brought back stories that amazed and humbled those who heard them. Cities that existed in multiple dimensions at once, powered by energies drawn from the quantum foam itself. Worlds created from pure thought and will, perfectly suited to the needs of their inhabitants. Ships that could travel not just between stars but between entire universes. They have become gods, whispered one crystalline refugee. But gods who care for mortals. No, replied Dr. Jiane Seo, who had chosen to join the human civilization. They have simply learned to think beyond the limitations we imposed on ourselves. They are still recognizably human, still curious, still innovative, still eager to help others. But they are no longer bound by our fears. As the last council strongholds fell, President Dong-Hyun Park made one final address to the survivors. His image appeared on screens throughout the refugee camps, speaking to beings from hundreds of species who had found safety in humanity's interdimensional realm. Your old civilization has ended, he said gently. That is cause for mourning. So much history, so much culture lost forever. But it is also cause for hope. You have been given a chance to help build something new, something better. He gestured to the impossible vista behind him. A city that stretched across multiple realities, filled with beings from dozens of different galaxies working together in harmony. This is what cooperation can achieve when fear is set aside. This is what we might have built together if your leaders had chosen trust over suspicion, but they made their choice. And now you must make yours. Will you live in the past mourning what was lost? Or will you help us build a future that surpasses anything that came before? Most chose the future. The old Galactic Council was gone, consumed by the very dangers it had been created to face. Its member species were scattered to the stellar winds or sleeping in deep vaults, waiting for better times that would never come. But from its ashes arose something unprecedented. In the void between galaxies, humanity and its allies built a new kind of civilization. There was no central government, no ruling species, no hierarchy based on age or technology. Every being had a voice. Every culture was valued. Every idea was welcome. They called it the Interdimensional Cooperative, and it grew rapidly as beings from across the universe chose to join. Species from other galaxies brought knowledge of physics that seemed like magic. Refugees from dying civilizations contributed art, music, and literature that enriched everyone. Even some of the Void Hunters eventually chose to abandon their destructive ways and seek membership. The galaxy that had rejected humanity became empty and quiet. Its trade routes were dark, its great cities were ruins, its proud civilizations were memories. The Void Hunters moved on to easier prey in distant galaxies, leaving behind a wasteland of dead worlds and broken dreams. But in the space between spaces, in dimensions that touched all realities, humanity's true legacy thrived. They had learned the hardest lesson of all, that sometimes the greatest gift you can give someone is to let them face the consequences of their choices. The silence that had begun with humanity's exile had ended not with their return, but with their transcendence. They had moved beyond the need for acceptance or approval from those who had rejected them. They had found something better than being part of the galaxy. They had learned to create their own. And in the end, that made all the difference. The old order had fallen, destroyed by its own fears and prejudices. But the new order that rose in its place was built on the foundation humanity had always offered: cooperation, inclusion, and the simple recognition that all intelligent beings deserved respect and dignity. It had taken the destruction of galactic civilization to teach that lesson. But for those wise enough to learn it, the future was brighter than any star.